Hi everyone, Andrew here from the Time Series Insights Program Management Team. In this video, we're going to step through a few important concepts related to Time Series Insights. Specifically, we're going to look through an environment's capacity, or the overall amount of data it can store. We're going to look at data retention, which is in terms of time. And finally, we're going to look at the ingress throughput based on the configurations of the first two topics. So you'll notice I'm in the Azure portal. This is located at portal.azure.com. I've gone into the environment in which I want to investigate. You'll notice a couple of things right at the top. When I first provisioned this environment, I chose which type of environment, an S1 or an S2 environment to choose. In this case, I picked an S1 environment. Now, this is really important because you only have the ability to pick which environment type you're going to choose when you provision it. And so at a high level, an S1 environment starts at 30 million events, or approximately 30 gigabytes of data, and it can scale up to 10 units, with each unit being the amount I just mentioned. So an S1 environment can ultimately reach 300 million events, or approximately 300 gigabytes of data. Now, an S2 environment starts at that amount, 300 million events or 300 gigabytes of data, and it scales up to 10 units of that. So it can ultimately reach 3 terabytes of data or 3 billion events. Now, the reason why this is important is because as of this recording, June of 2018, we don't provide the ability to migrate between environments. And it's our intention that we'll be able to unblock this in the future, but because it's a limitation, we want to make you aware of it now. So as I mentioned, this is an S1 environment, currently has a retention policy of 31 days. I'm going to go to the configure blade of this environment, and I now have the ability to go and change the capacity. So I can go and, as I mentioned, scale this up to 300 million events. You'll notice that this changed. You'll also notice that my ingress rate changed. Now it's currently 10 million events per day. If I go back down, you'll see that at one unit, I had 1 million events per day. Now, the other thing you'll notice is that you have the ability to change data retention. Now, data retention will by default start at 30 days, but I have the ability to scale this up or down up to 400 days or down to 1 day. Now, the last thing you'll note is that you have the ability to change the behavior of a Time Series Insights environment when capacity is reached in this configuration blade as well. By default, when your capacity is reached in your environment, we will purge the oldest data from that environment to make room for your freshest data, which generally speaking is what most of our users have expressed they'd like Time Series Insights to do when that occurs. However, we understand that some users may want to make sure that their oldest data is retained for a set period of time. And so to do that, you can select Pause Ingress. Let us know that you have reviewed the documentation such that you understand the ramifications of this choice, and select Save, and that will be updated. The last thing I'd like to cover today is ingress throughput based on the decisions of capacity or data retention associated with the environment that you are configuring. Now, to provide an example of what this looks like, if you provision 1 unit of S1, you can configure that environment to retain data for up to 400 days. If you configured this single unit of S1 to retain data for 400 days, the average daily ingress that you have in this environment is 1/400th of the allotted environment. So for a single unit of an S1 environment, 30 gigabytes, you'd actually have the ability to ingress approximately 75 megabytes per day. Now, we won't cap that. Your throughput is going to be what you see here, an ingress rate of 1 million events per day. However, if you go beyond 75 megabytes per day, you should anticipate that you are not going to be able to store 30 million events for 400 days because you have exceeded the overall ingress rates that would sort of map to that overarching amount. If you wanted to be able to increase your daily ingress while still being able to store data for up to 400 days or some longer period of time, you would need to increase the capacity. So in this case, I would now, instead of having the ability to do 75 megabytes a day, I would have the ability to do 225 megabytes a day because I have 3 units. To provide another example, if I had an S2 environment that I wanted to configure to retain data for 180 days, I would need to, I'd be able to retain data for 180 days so long as I didn't exceed a daily ingress rate of 1.66 gigabytes. Or to provide another example, if I had an S2 environment with 1 unit. To provide another example, if I took a single unit S2 environment and I wanted to configure that environment to retain data for 180 days, I would be able to achieve 180 days of retention so long as I didn't exceed a daily average ingress rate of 1.66 gigabytes. If I exceeded that and I didn't have lulls in that data as well, days where I didn't ingress that amount or I ingressed a significantly smaller amount, then my data would not be stored for the full 180 days. Based on my behavior that I have on by default, the oldest data would be purged once I reached the overall max size of that environment, which in this case for a single unit S2 environment would be 300 gigabytes of data. And with that, we will go ahead and wrap up this video. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch it and for using the product.